So last week, the Titans sacked Garth Brennan, and I did a video going over their recruitment over the last few years. Now, a lot of people in the comment section were saying, hey, please do this club, please do that club, do more videos like this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off with the West Tigers. They're a club who I think have been quite disappointing over the last few years. They've been showing a little bit of promise, but they go 2 steps forward and then 2 steps back, it seems. And they've had a lot of problems with their coaches. Obviously, Ivan Cleary came in and he left just as quick. And now Michael Maguire's there and he's trying to sort out the troubles that Ivan Cleary brought in. And a lot of that revolves around recruitment. So I thought it'd be a good idea to review the Tigers recruitment and give them a pass-fail mark. Now, spoilers, Tigers fans, this isn't going to be pretty for you. I knew your recruitment hadn't been very good, but when I went through and had a look at actually who you've signed, it's pretty tragic. Now, for the Titans video, I didn't talk about players they've lost, but the Tigers, they lost some pretty significant players. Let's go through them. So first off, they lost Josh Adokar. They wouldn't give him a go. He was sitting in reserve grade. He's gone to the Storm, and obviously, he's ended up playing for New South Wales and being brilliant. Curtis Sirinen, he wasn't great for the Tigers, but he's showing his potential now at Manly. He's doing good things in the second row for Manly at the moment. Aaron Woods was the captain. He left the Tigers. He moved to the Bulldogs. It wasn't successful, but he's now at the Sharks. He's come off the bench. I wouldn't say he's been a success for them either. He's lost his Australian position and New South Wales position since moving from the Tigers, but nonetheless, that's another big name player the Tigers have lost. Now we move on to Mitchell Moses. He's another one I wouldn't say has been a big success at the Eels, but nonetheless, he was a junior. He came through the ranks. There's a lot of potential about him, and they let him go. And then finally, the biggest one, he's probably the best player in the game at the moment. It's James Tedesco. He's just off the back of scoring the match-winning try of New South Wales, and he was once a Tigers junior. Now, I think it was probably inevitable that he was going to leave the Tigers just because of how good he was and what the Roosters can do. If Roosters want a player, they get the player 9 times out of 10. But regardless of all that, those are 5 pretty big players to lose in 3 years, especially when you add in the fact that they've lost bit part players like Nguama and players like that. They've lost a lot of good players. Also, to add to the misery is the fact that the players they have signed to replace them. Let's go through them. Let's start with 2017. Now, just before we get into grading the players, I just want to preface this by saying that this is all based on value. It's relative to the money that they're on and also just if they're good value for money. The first player we're going to look at is Jamal Idris. Now, this guy was a free agent. He left the Penrith Panthers. He's looking for an opportunity. He came back. Tigers gave him the opportunity, and it didn't really work out. I mean, I think everything can be said about this signing is the fact that he's no longer playing NRL, he's no longer playing rugby league. He just seemed to have disappeared. Poor old Jamal Idris showed so much promise in his early days of the Bulldogs, but definitely didn't show any of that at the Tigers. Whether it was due to injuries or personal things, it was still a failure in my opinion. The only other player that I could find that they signed in 2017 was Mac McCurrick, and I got to say, he was pretty serviceable for them. He wasn't outstanding or anything, but for the amount of money I think they would have paid for him, I think it was good value, so I'm going to give him a pass mark. So for 2017, a pass and a failure, not too bad, 50%, it's alright, but they didn't really sign too many people, so I don't even know if it's worth talking about. 2018 was where they made their big money moves, and big money it was. Not good money, but big money. I believe this was Ivan Cleary's first full year, and this was where he was trying to develop his own roster. I'm not sure what he was thinking, but these are the players that he signed. Anyways, the first player I'm going to be talking about is actually going to be a pass mark. It's going to be Benji Marshall. I think he's actually been a really good signing. Now, when he actually signed, I was thinking, yeah, it's a feel-good story, moving back to the Tigers, but he's not really going to provide anything for him. He might be good experience in reserve grade or whatever, but he's actually been fantastic for him. He's been probably their best halves player over the last few years, which is actually quite surprising considering some of the other players they've signed to play in the halves and who they already had on the books and that. But yeah, Benji Marshall has been brilliant for them. I think he even earned a recall to New Zealand in the last few years. So Benji Marshall, that's a big tick of approval for me. Now, we've already talked about Benji. We may as well talk about Robbie now. Robbie Fowler, I'm going to give a pass mark to him as well. I never thought I'd say that about Robbie Fowler. Haven't been the biggest fan of him throughout his career, and when he left the Tigers, I thought, yeah, good move, get rid of him. You know, sort of clear him out of the cap and, you know, move him on, bring in someone else. But they never really did that. They never really replaced him. And to replace him, essentially, they brought him back. And he's actually been quite good as well. Another player, just like Benji, I thought would come over, maybe play a bit of reserve grade, a bit of first grade here and there. But he's actually played very, very well. So, like I said, another pass mark on Robbie Farah there. Now we move on to not so good of a signing. Now, this actually pains me to say it because he's one of my favourite players at the Bulldogs. So we're going to be talking about Josh Reynolds. I think that's a big failure for me. I think for obvious reasons. I think he's played like 9 games in 3 seasons, on 2 seasons or whatever, and a lot of the times he was going down like very, very early. Poor guy, he's just riddled with injuries, and he plays such a physical style of footy that the injuries, once the injuries are there, he's nothing. He's not like a player that has the smarts or whatever, and, you know, can sort of tone it back a little bit, and, you know, sort of like Cameron Smith, doesn't have to go balls to the wall all the time, just pick his moments. Josh Reynolds has to do that. He's all about energy, and if his body's given out, he's not really worth anything. So yeah, Josh Reynolds has not been a good signing, especially for the money that he's on. He's on a huge contract. You put that in comparison to Benji, who was coming over for probably barely anything. And yeah, it's not been a good signing. I mean, they're looking to try and offload him at the moment. I'll be very surprised if anyone touches him. I believe he's on about $750,000 a year, which is crazy money. Even if he was fully fit, that's big money for him. So yeah, a big failure mark to Josh Reynolds. So we've just done our first failure for 2018. We're going to move on to our second failure of 2018, Tane Milne. He signed from the Dragons. I don't even know if he played a game or even if he lasted the preseason. I know he got sacked. That's all I remember. So that's easily a failure mark for me. Anyways, he moved to the Warriors, I'm pretty sure, and he hasn't even got to go there either. So yeah, I don't think he was ever going to sort of cut it down a roll, but there you go, another failure for the Tigers. The next player we're going to be talking about is a former Origin player. We're going to be talking about Chris McQueen. Now, he's been at a few clubs before the Tigers. Obviously, started off at the Rabbitohs, played pretty well, moved to the Titans, pretty lackluster at the Titans, and has ended up at the Tigers. And once again, pretty lackluster at the Tigers. I don't know what sort of contract he would have been on, but you'd think it'd be a little bit. And he's found himself in reserve grade mostly. And whether that's down to Ivan Cleary or Michael Maguire, he still hasn't really found his feet in first grade for the last few years. So I've got to put a failure for him. I think Chris McQueen has it there to be a good player, but he's getting old, and yeah, I don't see him sort of making a mark in the NRL anytime soon. So yeah, a big failure there. Now we go from a former Origin representative onto a New Zealand representative, Russell Packer. Now he signed with the Tigers for pretty big money. I don't know the figure, but I know it was talked about being pretty big money. A little bit of hype around it as well. He was half decent for the Dragons. Obviously, a lot of controversy about Russell Packer, but the Tigers are keen on him. They got their man. I got to say, he has not delivered. If you look at his stats, I don't know what the stats were like at the Dragons, but his stats for the Tigers are not impressive at all, especially for someone who signed on a relatively big contract. At least what it was kind of reported when he was signed was that it was on big money, and he's definitely not delivered. He's definitely not playing up there, and especially when he was kind of signed to replace Aaron Woods. Even though Aaron Woods isn't great, his stats are still better than Russell Packer. Now, I know Russell Packer was pretty filthy with Ivan Cleary for leaving the Tigers how he did, especially considering he came to the Tigers based off what Ivan Cleary was telling him, but he could be filthy at Ivan Cleary. If I was Tigers fans, I'd be filthy at Russell Packer. He has not delivered. That's a failure for me. Now, moving on to another former New Zealand international. It's Ben Madalito, another prop, another disappointment. Now, Ben Madalito came to the Tigers. He was out of favour at the Warriors, and he's come over to the Tigers, and I thought, yeah, he's probably going to recapture some form. I thought he was pretty good for the Warriors for the most part. He used to be one of my favourite props, and it kind of all went downhill for whatever reason. I don't know if it was injuries or off-field or just effort things, but yeah, even at the Tigers, he hasn't really produced. Once again, like Packer, his stats aren't very good, and especially considering they just lost Aaron Woods, you'd think he would step up, but it hasn't really been the case. So I don't know what to say about Madalino other than failure. No, that's a big X. The next player we're going to talk about is somewhat of a cult hero at the Tigers, in the NRL in general, purely because of his hair. It's definitely not about his playing ability, because it's Mbye Funua. The guy is a center or a winger. He's built like a brick shithouse, but he's really, really small. Kind of doesn't fit the modern football player. But yeah, this guy, he's been in and out of first grade. I know he killed it in the Super League, and I think that's probably where he should be. That's where he would excel. I believe he's going back there next year anyways. NRL standard, not quite up to it. Super League standard, definitely up to it. Whether he's worth his value, I don't really know, but just I don't know what he's signed for, so I've got to have to give him a failure because he's been in and out of first grade. I don't think he's been very good. Now we move on to another player who's very small in stature. It's Cory Thompson, except Cory Thompson is actually really, really good. Now, he's played mostly on the wing, but he's now lately found himself a fullback, and I think he's been pretty good. Now, he's someone who he played in first grade a few years ago for the Bulldogs, played in the grand final, went to Super League, killed it there, come back, was apparently desperate to come back, and he's ended up at the Tigers, and I think he signed for very, very little initially, which is great value. He's just re-signed recently, I think, and whatever he signed for, it's good value. Cory Thompson, he can cover a lot of positions. He's a very, very good player, gives 110% every time. If I was a Tigers fan, I would be very happy with Cory Thompson in the side, so that's a big pass mark for me. So we've just gotten our first pass mark in a little while. Is that going to continue? I don't think so. The next player we're going to be talking about is Robbie Rocco. Now, it's quite unfortunate what's happened to Robbie Rocco. He's bounced around a few clubs as of late, but he was kind of making a name for himself at the Knights. I thought he was playing pretty good, and then he just got injuries, some really bad injuries. Ended up at the Rabbitohs, couldn't get a spot in the first grade side there. Has moved to the Tigers and can't really find a first grade spot at the Tigers either. Now, he's someone who showed a lot of potential, like I said, at the Knights, and I thought he was going to recapture that at the Rabbitohs. Didn't happen, and I thought the Tigers took a punt on him. I thought, yeah, it's a decent move. They'll get something out of him. They haven't really. He's been very ineffective. I think he's mostly been playing reserve grade / injured or whatever. So for that, even though he's probably signed on very little, I got to give a failure for that. Now, the next player we're going to be talking about is Peter Godinez. Now, ever since his time at the Warriors, I've kind of had a soft spot for Peter Godinez. I don't really know why, but I thought he was kind of half decent and just needed an opportunity. He's been given opportunities, though. It hasn't really taken that well, especially at the Tigers. There were spots up for grab, and he didn't really get any of them. I think he's been moved on by the Tigers as well. Now, I'd like to say he probably didn't sign for much, and he kind of was quite versatile for them. So, I do kind of want to give him a pass mark just because they got some decent value out of him. But it's also a temptation to give him a failure mark as well. But I'm going to go a pass mark, give him a tick of approval just because he could cover a fair few positions, came off the bench, could start, and probably didn't sign for much. So, yeah, it's decent signing, I guess, but it didn't last very long. The next player is someone I wasn't sure what to say about either because I don't really remember his career. I don't remember his game. He only played one game. It's Tyson Gamble. Now, apparently, he's a 5'8" halfback, and I looked at the articles when I looked him up, and they said he actually had a pretty good game. He was clutch or something like that. I'm going to give him a pass mark purely just based off the fact that he was a youngster, probably signed for barely anything, and, I mean, he at least played first grade, so I mean, he played one game for them. He gave some value. And like I said, probably was on bare minimum. So, provided decent coverage, I guess. So, that's a tick of approval just because I don't really know who he is. Now, we move on to the last signing of 2018 that I think of anyway. It was a mid-season signing. We're going to be talking about Moses Mbye. Now, he's actually the captain at the moment, so it's a bit of a hard one to grade. He's just made his debut for Queensland, played in all 3 games for Queensland, actually started the last game at centre, and that's where he's been finding himself playing for the Tigers lately, at centre, but he did sign to play at fullback. In fact, I don't really know what is his strongest position. He played at the Bulldogs, my team. I watched him play fullback, centre, halves, hooker, and he can't seem to lock down a spot anywhere. I don't really know what his position is. He's a very, very good athlete. He's proved that at the Bulldogs, proved that at the Tigers, but once again, he's been moved around so much, and he's on a lot of money, and he's just not providing the goods for that amount of money. So, even though he is their captain, it's very weird to say, but I've got to give him a failure mark. He just hasn't been a good signing. So, Ivan Cleary made a lot of signings for season 2018. Most of them duds in my opinion. Not a good year of recruitment, but is 2019 going to be any better? They've got a new coach. Michael Maguire's there. Ivan Cleary's gone. Does it get better? So the first player of 2019 that I'm going to be talking about is Robert Jennings. Now, he actually was quite decent for the Rabbitohs in the previous season, but he found himself without a club. Now, there was talk about him staying at the Rabbitohs, but they couldn't afford him with salary cap. But he's found himself at the Tigers, and he's been in the centres, in the wing. I don't think he's played particularly well, but I would assume he's not on a lot of money. And even though he did score a lot of tries last season, I think he was maybe tied for top try scorer. He was right up there. A lot of it was just catching the ball and putting it down. He didn't have to do too much. And I think that's kind of been shown at the Tigers. It's not like he's been amazing or anything. He's definitely not scored anywhere near the amount of tries as what he did at the Rabbitohs. And I don't know. I think I'll give him a pass mark purely based on the fact that he's been playing every week. But I feel like they've got better options. They're just not playing them. But hey, that's the Tigers for you. So, yeah, Robert Jennings, I'll give him a pass mark just based on the fact that he's providing pretty decent value for what he is. The next player is the guy that I actually thought would end up playing in the centres. It's Paul Morosky, I think is how you pronounce it. He came from the Roosters. He's played a handful of games. I think he finds himself on the wing this week as I record this video. But I definitely thought he was going to be in the centres. He wasn't, though. They got Isan Masters, and then there was a centre spot available. And, yeah, I thought it was his. It just hasn't been. Robert Jennings has been in the centres, and that's why I gave Robert Jennings the pass mark, because he's actually been getting picked every week. Morosky hasn't. I've got to give him a value for this. I thought he was going to be a really good signing, but he just hasn't been. Now, Morosky made his way from the Roosters to the Tigers. This player also did. It's Ryan Madison. He was really good for the Roosters. He's quite versatile, and he's gone from being not a bit part player. He was pretty good for the Roosters. He was playing off the bench, starting some games. Like, he was constantly in the side, but he wasn't a star player. He's gone to the Tigers, and he's instantly became a star player for the Tigers. You can probably argue he's their best player. He was on the verge of playing for New South Wales. Probably unlucky to not get picked for New South Wales, to be honest. But he's a very, very good player. Great ball player, very strong. Play 80 minutes. I really rate Ryan Madison as a player. So let's give him 3 ticks. That's very good. That's the best signing they've made in years. But guys, that's the last signing they made. That's all the signings they've done over the last 3 years, and as you can see, pretty dreadful. Factor in the players they've lost over the same amount of time, and yeah, you can see why the Tigers are really, really struggling. Now, if you take a look at the ladder over the last few years, you can see in 2017 they finished 14th. It's a pretty poor finish, but in 2018 they improved. They ended up 9th. You can say that they just missed out in the 8, but they really didn't. Look at the points. It's a big points difference. So they were nowhere near close to getting into the 8, but I mean, it's better than 14th. But this year, it feels like they've regressed. They've gone all the way back to season 2017. At the time of recording, they're in 12th spot, and there is definitely time for them to improve and make a run for the top 8. However, I just don't see it happening. Now, the Tigers, we can all say they had a few shitty years, whether that's down to coaching or losing players. I don't know, but their recruitment definitely hasn't helped. It's been pretty poor. Not necessarily the players they've recruited, but for the amount of money they've brought them over for. It just hasn't really worked out. They definitely need to get that stuff sorted out. Just like the Titans, they need to sort that out, and I think they'll be right. But whether they do, who knows? They're trying to offload Josh Reynolds. They're still trying to offload a lot of players Ivan Cleary signed. Because Ivan Cleary, I think he really left that club in the shitter. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say about the Tigers' recruitment over the last few years. Leave in the comment section below. What are your thoughts of their recruits? Have they been good? Have they been bad? Guys like Madison and Mbye, I feel like some people are going to say are good. Some people are going to say they're bad. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what you got to say. Righto, guys, if you happen to enjoy the video, make sure you go ahead and smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagrams on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke on YT. Also, add me on Snapchat while you're at it. I don't have it here, but it's the same as my Twitter and Instagram, Mr. Luke on YT. Add me on that. Also, go ahead and like my Facebook page. I've been posting on that a little bit more, so trying to get the followers up on that. So go ahead and like that. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.